Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Screech Bomb Commentaries. My name is David Baron von Fabulous Lark, and my co-commentator is.
Callum, the good doctor, Young.
We're here today to bring you another exciting episode of the Keyforge Online Team Event Top Cut. I believe we're now down to the final eight, so the quarterfinals. Am I correct there, Callum?
I believe so,
Hmm.
yes.
Do you want to run us down who has made it to the final eight? Because we have a bit of a civil war going on, a veritable Captain America and Iron Man situation.
A veritable Captain N, a veritable civil war indeed between the Hamburg Atlanteans. And so today we have Hamburg Atlanteans 3 versus Hamburg Atlanteans 2.
Hmm.
Hamburg Atlanteans, a team you've seen at the top of many of the events that we've commentated thus far,
It's
as they are very, very good.
team that we've also have commentated on previously as well, and in fact, the first deck we're going to be talking about today is one that we have commentated on previously in Prodigy Uchida.
Yes, Prodigy Uchida being played by Finchmaster, representing Hamburg Atlanteans 3. So this deck is quite notorious, as it has a very sort of specific archetype, and it's perhaps the peak of that. And that is have auto encoder, discard all of your creatures, destroy everything on the board, and play pips.
Yeah, so the big focus here when you look at it is the creature control, which is 22. In fact, the creature control, other than its board presence, is the highest stat in the deck, which you don't see too often. It'll tend to be its M
No,
generation, maybe its speed, but in this case, the
but
creature control.
yeah, higher than the expected Ember even.
Mm.
And so triple Gateway to Dis, triple Fangtooth Cavern, um, triple Rapid Evolution to protect any of your own creatures that you do maybe fancy playing.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, you pretty much just clear your opponent's board every single turn.
Yeah, you'll be if anyone reaps in this game, I will be incredibly surprised. And I believe in the last game we commented with this, no one managed a single
No,
reap.
no, not a single reap happened the last game we commented with this.
Mm.
It was over. And it's got 17 pips, so can generate that Ember pretty quickly, whilst basically stopping you from doing anything and cycling very quickly with the auto encoder.
Yep.
It's also got double Inspector, double Infernus to purge any useful things that you might get to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the Infernus and the Inspector can be important because it just means that if you do have things other than creatures, it's going to be firstly purging any actions you have just to make it even harder to do anything, and then Inspectors you might get lucky and hit some things in hand that are really useful too.
Yeah, so you just take them out of the race for pips, basically.
Yeah, so I think the Dis is the very much one of the. I think the Disney Untamed are kind of two focuses here, really. When like as you said, with the three gateway to Disses, that even if someone like managed to get like a lucky hand of say six creatures and be like, okay, now because they're on the board, he's gonna have that gateway to Dis ready to just sweep that away and just reset the board.
That's where all your creature control and disruption comes from.
Mm.
And the Legacy is pretty good too. You got like Double Daughter, Auto Encoder, Lethal Logica, Neurosiphon, so lots of card draw.
Yeah,
And then Effervescent Principle, BDQ, in case you need any of those, which you might.
yeah. Also
And
got a couple of daughters as well. So if you haven't got this Fangtooth out yet, you get those daughters out, get that draw, and just get further towards your end game of shutting down that board.
yeah, and it will just beat most decks by doing this.
Mm. So just gonna go into a couple of rares. One that I maybe kind of like dismissed a bit in the previous game, but I now kind of have like a more of an appreciation for is Earthbind. This creature cannot be used unless its creature has discarded a card this turn. If say someone has got like a bigger creature that's going to be more like sticking on the board, like your bigger Saurians, some of your larger
Sanctum.
larger Sanctum creatures, some like Brobnar. If you play some AoE Brobnar, maybe some of them have quite large creatures. Whacking an Earthbind on that and just meaning that this one may stay alive, but you not be able to do anything with it is a very very good move.
It's a good card, not one you see that often.
Mm. But yeah, it is triple Fangtooth in the Untamed that is really gonna be impactful, along with the auto encoder, just to allow you to just kind of rip through your deck like a toddler with a box of tissue paper.
That's a very specific analogy there.
If you ever seen a toddler with a box of tissue paper, it's terrifying, Callum.
I have not, but I imagine it is terrifying. So should we have a look at the other deck that it will be tearing apart like a toddler with a box of tissue paper today?
Well, let's see if it will be. We have Specialist Sandstorm Gleefswald.
It's being played by Lorenzo from Hamburg Atlanteans 2.
Indeed it is. And we have another mass mutation deck with the return of Sanctum. Always a fan to see those guys back at it again.
Yes, and I think the irony of this is that this deck will stop pretty much all other things except the sort of plan that Prodigy Uchida was trying to pull off.
Mm.
Because if you look at it, it's incredibly controlly in a certain way because you have a response to most things that are happening in the game. So you
Yeah.
have double Skippy Time Hog, which will shut down the usage of the board
Yes,
at
Skippy
several
Time
points.
Hog is a rare. Your opponent cannot use any card during their turn. So that's artifacts, that's creatures, anything you have on the board with like any kind of like thing you make you turn it sideways. You can't use during your turn. You still play
Yeah,
cards, you just can't use them. To clarify.
superb card. You've got the Purifier of Souls to turn off a lot of destroyed effects, which would hit a lot of your sort of Ludo Saurian combinations.
Also,
A
it's
lot of
like
your sort of
some kind of Kote Dis as well. This is very good for with your kind of dust imp
some
shenanigans.
none of your mutant fiends in Mass Mutation Disc.
Indeed.
You've got the Vault Keeper to turn off stealing,
Yep.
which is also going to take out a lot of decks.
Actually, just to come back on the Purifier of Souls, though, one thing to note is destroyed effects cannot trigger is a mutual effect. So, for example, the Techno Fiends in Specialist also will not work. It's not just your opponent's cards that destroyed
Yeah, you've got
effects.
to be a bit careful with that one, but I think they'll probably be okay. It's not that many destroyed effects,
No.
and yeah, it's got a double Mark of Dis, which will be very controlling, along with a lot of other useful discs like the Essence Scales,
Mhm.
the Techno Fiends
Yeah.
to destroy that.
It's got a break key as well, which is super handy. If your opponent's forged more keys than you can unforge their key, and they gain 6. Really useful if you've got any ways to increase their key cost. This deck doesn't, but I've
Not
got
that
a
I can
few with that where,
see.
yeah, it can be very effective. Um,
So,
One other
I
thing noticing as well is it has Malefic Horn, which is enhance for 4 damage pips, and after any creature is dealt damage by a bonus icon, deal 1 damage to that creature, just doubling the damage of your damage icons.
that contributes to the 9 damage enhancements in the
It
stack.
does, yeah. Just a lot of enhancements across the board. 7
A lot of
capture, 9 damage, 5 draw. Enhancements for days.
This deck would usually be looking to play a very slow, very controlling game, just kind of strangle the life out of your opponent by stopping them from really doing anything. The problem is that it's a deck with 23 creatures
Yeah.
against a deck that has 22 creature control and loves wiping the board.
Yeah, this is the difficulty. Is a lot of the effects this deck has that are very useful are decks that require a creature to stay on the board for a turn or more, and then to do a thing. You've got stuff like Snoret, which you can, with I assume we can look at some of these enhancements, and if you've got some capture, oh, that's a lot of it. Yeah, you definitely got some capture in that disc, so you could potentially put a bunch of capture icons onto your Snoret and then action it. But
yeah, stuff
it,
like the captures in Sanctum on the Salvador's Scrivener Fabian.
mm-hmm.
Therefore, you want to have that stick around and steal. And I just don't think any of the things are going to last more than a turn
Yeah,
for a good chunk of the game.
exactly. This is the issue that you have is that you've also got like stuff like Adaptoid with a bunch of
Oh
enhancements
boy,
in logos.
that could be a very fun Adaptoid.
But the issue is that assuming that Prodigy gets those fancies out early, then you've got to think that
Yeah,
keeping anything on the board is going to be difficult. And then if anything is like still on the board, you've got stuff like your gateways, your death quarks, everything like that to just go, oh, that's a bit scary. I'd like that dead, please.
yeah. Even if it can make it, even if it can make it to the deck once, Prodigy has then probably got the lock in a way that I think Sandstone will not make it through,
Yeah.
just because it's so creature dependent.
The big problem we have here is the big fat 0 in artifact control. And that's going to be a struggle because I think this is a conversation I've had with like other Keyforce players recently. Is like how essential is artifact control in today's meta, and I think it's becoming to a point where it is essential. That
Which I think is a bit of a shame. I don't like pigeonholing a deck like that,
it's difficult. I
but
mean,
it does feel like it a little bit.
yeah, I think that even if you had like just say with these houses, I don't know what artifact controller is. Does have Poltergeist?
They have Harvest Time would probably do it.
Harvest Time, yeah,
That'd be actually very good to purge
that would be
straight
great.
away.
Yeah, Harvest Time would be great, but that's a rare and unlikely to get. And I think that's part of the problem with today's game is that you do come across decks where you just need to be able to just get rid of artifacts, and
You need
sometimes
certain responses.
yeah, and I
Double
think
Mark of Disc maybe delay it, but I don't think it ultimately stops it.
no, Mark of Dis it requires priests on the board. and
It does, yep. So
Prodigy usually
there might
doesn't
not
need
be
to do
any.
that, really.
So I think we are relatively clear in our prediction.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a shame because I really like Sandstorm as a deck. It's very much my kind of Keyforge. It's very much, get a big board, do things with your things on the board, like kind
Yeah,
of get your
we've
boot on
seen
the
it.
opponent's throat and just press down.
We've seen it done some cracking things before and be very well, but it's don't think it has the tools to win this matchup.
Sadly not. I think Prodigy is the kind of deck where if you've got that off-back control, if you stick like a Tachyon Pulse or like you said a Harvest Time, you can make a bit of a game about it. But with no off-back control at all, it's always going to be a very, very much of an uphill battle.
All right, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I'd like to see you in the game portion of the episode. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the game portion of the episode. We have a bit of a change from the deck chat in that we still have myself, Baron von Fabulous, but we have our erstwhile technical support here with us, Matthew Tuck.
Standing in for the good doctor who, alas, cannot join us for this game.
Sadly not. We had some technical issues, but we were pushing through to get you that content that you need. But yeah, we've got obviously Hamburg Atlanteans. We have Finchmaster on the top of the screen playing Prodigy Uchida. And we have Lorenzo on the bottom of the stream saying Specialist Sandstorm. So, some good opening hands, I think, from both sides here. I think both players will be quite happy with these.
Yeah, I certainly think if I were in that position, I'd certainly keep it. Where Finchmaster and Lorenzo, I'd be thinking, well, ooh.
Finchmaster disagrees, but I think got a better hand, if anything,
Yeah,
with the daughter.
you're right.
And Lorenzo opting to keep by the looks of it.
Which you can see, got some good logos there. You got Skippy. It's always nice to have,
Indeed.
even early on.
But no, Finchmaster there gambled and beat the house. I think you'll be very, very pleased with this opening hand, especially that Fangtooth Cavern, as we said in the deck chat, very crucial to his game plan.
And then chucking out that daughter to get the extra hand size.
Indeed. Always a great one on turn one, especially after you've mulligan. Getting to draw 2 cards off the turn 1 is very nice. We're going to see logos coming out from Lorenzo, though.
Yeah, Kronos to archive something, Skippy, Adaptoid as well. Got to love an Adaptoid.
Yeah, especially off the draw from that Kronos there. So yeah, managing to get the entire hand out, but not the best to draw into here with the 2/2/2 hand for Lorenzo. I imagine we're going to see some Untamed from Finchmaster.
I would be shocked if we didn't, particularly given he can't use that daughter to reap even if he wanted to.
He cannot, and you probably wouldn't mind getting a bit of extra power on the daughter, making it bigger than your opponent's logos.
Particularly if you then play that Fangtooth, or play the Fangtooth beforehand, right? Because you get the Amber.
Yes, I think, you'd want to play the Fangtooth, then the Rapid Evolution, and put it onto that daughter, making it a 5 power. Ooh, although problematic here is 2 decisions you've got to make. Firstly, whether you want to play the Gloriana's Attendant, which you probably do actually, because it's a 1 power, but it means it's going to be harder to kill stuff later. Also, do you want to play that Dark Queen Gloriana? Because if you play that...
You do, and he does.
He does have to return daughter to hand, which isn't ideal. I would have considered discarding that, I think.
Rapid Evolution to make that?
Ah, this is very clever. So he wants to take out the Cronus, or I suppose, and
yeah, it's got to be the Cronus.
Yeah, and by doing this though, by returning the daughter and increasing the Time Hog's power, he can now do that with the Fangtooth.
That's true. It's quite clever now you think about it.
It's very clever, yeah.
Not an obvious play.
No, and a damn from Lorenzo here, clearly agreeing that was not an obvious play, but very, very nice from Finchmaster there.
And Lorenzo's looking at a not great hand to respond.
Not great. We've got to wonder what's in the archives. Maybe he's got something. He's going to pick that up. Maybe he's got something there. We know he's definitely got a causal loop in there.
And we know he's already got 2 logos in hand. You could get something off the pit for the Skippy.
Yeah.
So, not Skippy, for the Adaptoid. So
exactly.
Maybe that?
Yeah, I think that's probably where I'd be thinking of going if this was my hand. But again, hard to tell without being able to look at the archives.
Yeah, he does call logos as we predicted, but does not pick up the archives.
No.
Instead, makes them even bigger.
Makes them even larger. And yeah, we do. Here was me checking the archives. This is some pre-recorded footage. And yeah, we do see a lot of Sanctum in that archive. So maybe hoping to set up a big Sanctum turn next turn now. And we drawing into even more. I think we are now very likely to see some Sanctum coming out.
And in terms of what he did in that turn, got a nice Adaptoid play, which, Who doesn't like Adaptoid? He's a good boy.
He is a good boy. He's a good lad.
Yeah, Finchmaster, not a great hand for them now after that great Untamed turn before.
No, it's a difficult one because if you play the Dis and you Gateway, it means you're going to kill that Xenofiend, which you might be fine with, gets you a steal, but it's not ideal. Logos, your daughter will die. Keyfrog, you're not going to want that to die unless you've got enough Ember to Forge here. So, a hard decision, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe hit the Gateway, but it seems like it would be a very early on to do that.
Yeah, and especially still getting those 3 chains where you're wanting to get out those Fangtooths, that auto-encoder, those artifacts. Chaining yourself this early is not something I'd be thrilled about.
So he goes Logos, plays
Bouncing
Death Claw.
Mm-hmm. And it plays the daughter just for that Ember. It's going to, of course, be killed by the Fangtooth Cavern, which we now see.
But it does increase his hand for at least 1 turn.
It does, yes. It gets him that extra draw, which is nice. And I think Dis maybe, if we are going to see a big Sanctum turn, Dis may be where we're going. And if we do see that big Sanctum turn, I think Lorenzo is not going to be thrilled. Lorenzo thinking about it, though, considering.
I mean, I would expect Sanctum. We've seen the archives. There's lots of Sanctum in there. He's got 4 Sanctum cards in hand. But maybe not, because looking at that Ember Heart, as I see it, it's got some damage just to that shoulder armor, which means he'd actually have to potentially kill one of his own creatures.
Yeah, and we do see the Sanctum. I think one thing that possibly led to that quite large amount of thought we saw there is that these are teammates. These are 2 players who have played with each other a lot, kind of know how each other play a lot, and maybe that's something considering he's probably got at least 1 Gateway Dis in hand, and he's kind of thinking, do I want to play? And we do see he didn't play into it too much, didn't pick up that archive, didn't take those Sanctum cards into hand, clearly kind of smelled something was up and was like, we haven't seen him play Dis at all this matchup. Maybe he's like hoping I overcommit to the board.
And he's been rewarded with a very nice Dis hand of his own.
Indeed he has, yeah. He's going to be smiling from ear to ear over that, I imagine.
What does Finchmaster do here?
Indeed?
Does he take that Dis, take the 3 chains? Or does he maybe do some shenanigans with Infernus? There's options for him here. None of them look amazing.
I think you take the Dis. Pure, if nothing else to knock Lorenzo off check. You know, he's on 6 Ember here.
Yeah, you get 1 or 2 with the Infernus.
Yeah, you're not going to take 1 turn Effervescent Principle. That's the only card. I think Dis has to be the choice. Do you use the board clear, though, is the question.
My instinct is you do, because it might let you steal 1, right?
Yeah, it almost certainly will. I mean, you're almost certain to play that Fiend.
Yeah.
Which he plays, maybe he's not going to play the board clear here then, because obviously playing it, Gateway to Dis is still in hand. And I suppose you can still kill that Escapee Time Hawk if you want at this point. And we're looking at discard here. What would you purge here, Tuck, if it were you?
I mean, I'd purge the Electric Inquiry for sure. And the Discombobulator, yeah, I'd probably the Discombobulator as well, to be honest.
Yeah, there's no capture in Finchmaster's deck.
Gateway to Dis.
So yeah, wants to get that steal off, and maybe just wants to get the Infernus back in the discard.
Looking at that, you've got 2 Fangtooths. I mean, that's just nasty to have out.
Yeah.
Even if you have to take a turn.
Yeah.
We're not playing much on the board.
And as we said Lorenzo doesn't have any artifact control, so once his Fangtooths are down, they're staying down. Which is not good when we see Lorenzo playing some very powerful Dis creatures here.
But you play those 3 Fangtooths, you can wipe that board.
Exactly, you can. I mean, I think you'll discard the Key Frog at that point. Maybe hold it in hand. I think probably discard it with those chains.
Yeah,
you don't want to. But you've got to think Finchmaster is very happy to have these out so early in the game. You know, only with 20 cards left in the deck, he's got the 3 big artifacts he really needs out. And he's going to be putting Lorenzo in a very difficult spot very soon.
So you're thinking quite hard about this turn?
Yeah, I think it's... I think to me it feels like the Fangtooth is the choice, and it is the choice he makes. But it's always... I think that's what you see a lot of like very good players do, is you see them like... Even though it seems like the choice is obvious, they will still take the time just to go, okay, is there a better choice? Is there any advantage to me playing the Effervescent Principle and the Odd Claude?
Take about 30 seconds to think about your plays before you make them.
Exactly.
Which, gives you a bit more time to plan out your turn. Ooh, draws into another Infernus. as well.
Yeah.
And as we said, use the Fangtooths to destroy all of that board.
But I think, like, although this is obviously Keyforge Online Teen event, it's not for money, and it's simply for, like, the glory and prestige of the thing. You know, it's with things like Keyforge Premier League as well. It's good practice to get into for that, where you might be in the finals of something where there is money on the line, and you want to be in the practice of kind of taking a moment, calming your nerves, and going, right, what's the best thing I can do here?
Lorenzo
And
called this here, not necessarily what I'd have expected, but Drekka, always very useful. Essence scale to have the Drekka Reap, yeah.
Yeah. And break key, sadly, Finchmaster hasn't forged the key, so not really setting Finchmaster back at all there. But I think
But he gets an amber from it, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And he captures one as well.
He does
and
indeed.
And if we're looking at Lorenzo's hand, immediately what we're drawn to is those incredible draw icons.
Indeed.
Even if they're not necessarily what you'd play given the archive.
No, I mean, I think at some point you're going to have to play that big Sanctum turn, but the way to look at it is, though, here with that Logos, you could draw it into an even better Sanctum turn. I don't think, other than that Ember Heart with the Bulwark and the shoulder armor, any Sanctum's been played at all, and that might be the way you play around the Fangtooth, you just flood the board.
But that was it, yeah. Oh, Effervescent Principle.
Yeah, and that's it.
And the Auto Encoder. I mean, I love Auto Encoder, and I think that was that can be a big contribution.
Yeah, and we do see Finchmaster get the gateway to Dis here, which is a real problem for Lorenzo, although he doesn't know it, because even if he does try and combat that those Fangtooth by just flooding the board with creatures, Lorenzo can just wipe them all away for the cost of a mere 3 chains.
Yeah, I mean that's his big problem here, right? Is that you can't really establish a board very easily because you've got the triple Fangtooths, and if you're Finchmaster, you'll play into that.
Yeah.
And then Finchmaster's got the gateway as well. Stirring Grave, Archives of the Chronos, gotta think he's planning a big Logos turn there, but he's also just drawn into 4 pretty nice Sanctum cards.
Yeah, I think you are right though. I think we are going to see a Logos turn just to archive a whole bunch.
Yeah.
We've also seen the second Mark of Dis now from Lorenzo into a completely empty board, and I think this is the power of Finchmaster's deck, in that it's so board light and it so doesn't need the board. It makes your opponent's cards like Mark of Dis actually actively worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting question with Finchmaster here, which is maybe even discard that gateway to Dis, because he doesn't know that there's lots of creatures in Lorenzo's hand, even if we do, though he might be thinking at looking at the discard and draw. But even then, Triple Fangtooth is not a board clear, but it's pretty close to one if you're happy to destroy your own creatures.
At this point, it definitely is for Finchmaster. I mean, we're going to see probably a lot of Sanctum cards go on the board. I mean, I think that could be what?
Yeah, but he's got to be thinking about that, right? Like, he's got to be worried about all that Sanctum.
He really does.
Gateway.
Yeah, I
hold gateway, play the Infernus, knock him off check.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Red Hot Armor will do some work, but not enough to kill anything. Yeah, I mean, I think he probably will hold that gateway. He might discard the Red Hot Armor and just be like, it's not worth it playing it just for an Ember. I'd rather maybe get a bigger Logos turn down the line. And he is playing Dis. Plays the Red Hot Armor for the Ember.
Armor, plays the Infernus.
Okay, and we are going to see some purging from the Infernus.
What would you get rid of? Probably Stirring Grave?
Let's have a look at what's in the disc. And we do see Break Key and the Stirring Grave. I think those are both very sensible options. You know,
I might have got Mark of Dis myself, perhaps, but like...
if I was playing under the deck, yes, but with Finchmaster's deck, you're so infrequently having creatures on the board.
And discards that gateway.
He does. That's interesting.
Could have been a risk for him there.
That's risky business. I mean, with a lot of he knows the Sanctum's coming. He knows he's not seen the Sanctum. He knows Lorenzo only has 5 cards left.
Do you think if you're Lorenzo, you take that big Sanctum turn now, or you archive all that remaining Sanctum with the Logos?
I think there's 2 things that could be running through Lorenzo's head here. The first is that he knows that there are 3 gateway to Disses in Finchmaster's deck. So is he thinking, well, the only reason he would discard that gateway is if he had another gateway and he's still reticent to play that Sanctum turn? But then the second thought you have there is, well, I can't never play the Sanctum turn.
Yeah.
You know,
at some point he's got to make a choice. Otherwise, that's like a solid 10 cards that are just sitting in an archive in hand.
Exactly, and I suppose the thing with the Sanctum turn is it does take Finchmaster off check here. So I think now
Yes.
may be the time. I think now, if there's a time to play it, it's now. Would be my thoughts.
I mean, I think we've got to acknowledge that Lorenzo is thinking quite hard about this turn, as you absolutely would be in his position, because
I mean,
there is some interesting with the Logos, given you've got the Kronos in the archives. You could get 4 cards archived from your hand from that.
Yeah. You definitely could, yeah, because there's a draw icon on the Kronos, I believe, is there as well.
Yes, plus the Labok. Well, Slobby Labok.
And Emberheart as well. You can ward something to maybe protect it against the Fangtooth as to,
Yeah.
you know,
there's lots of options for Lorenzo right now.
Yeah, and
Finchmaster's in a very strong position for sure.
Oh, completely.
But
I think I would go for the Sanctum purely to knock Finchmaster off the check and maybe buy myself a little bit more time and just hope he hasn't got that board clear. I think
I would agree if I were in his position, but as we've said, sometimes players take a little bit of time to think things through. He's obviously thinking this through quite hard.
Oh no, I mean, I think it's easy for me to say, and it's also like the order in which you take that turn as well. Like, okay, I'm going to play my Sanctum creatures. What order do I play them in? You know, are there any interactions with that? Is there any matter to anything being on the flanks or not? Like, if shoulder armor comes around, what do I want on the flank to play shoulder armor on? You know, these are the kind of questions you want to ask yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to think quite carefully when you're playing what is a very, very potentially big turn.
Exactly, yeah. You know, if I ward something with it, and we do see the Sanctum.
Does go for the Sanctum.
It's a lot of boys in hand. We see Dino Knight, General Salvador.
Vaultkeeper, always very nice. Gonna die quite quickly, but still very nice.
Yeah, I mean, 4 power, 1 armor, difficult to get rid of in quite a lot of decks, and generally good when there's the 2 fiends in Finchmaster's deck. There is a bit of steel there that can be stopping. But
that is a very large Sanctum board.
It is.
But the thing that immediately jumps at me when I look in Finchmaster's hand is that a lot of those boys are 4 power.
Oh no! Oh no!
Doesn't even need the gateway because you drop that standardized testing and you then use the Fangtooth to pop whatever's left.
No.
I mean, it's getting awarded, but I'm pretty sure it's not stopping what is going to be a pretty gross standardized testing.
And this has been a problem that Sanctum has had, like, even since the Kote days, of so many Sanctum creatures seem to be 4 power. Like,
yeah, I mean, look at it. Everything, almost all of 4 power. You've got 1 5 and 1 6, I think, on the night.
Yeah, so one of my favorite decks has this same problem with like cards like standardized testing, where like I say, like, you know, you have like back in the day it was Sergeants of Keels, Raiding Knights, Staunch Knights, sometimes Sequisers, all Vault Keepers, all 4 power, and you have the same thing here: Salvador, Vault Keeper, Gorvenal, Aldrich the Bolt, all 4 power. And it means
and Logos, and he picks up his archives, looking at opposition research and a neurosiphon. This is all. Oh, and he pops the board on Baldrick.
Yeah, but I didn't even need to do that, but just
no. I mean, that is, and then the opposition research discard.
All the reaping that Lorenzo is potentially going to do here, you know, that is heinous.
I mean, that is a hell of a turn. Lorenzo now got to gasp for something with that Kronos, right?
And like I was saying before about like these two players having played each other a lot and knowing each other's decks, you've got to wonder if that was maybe part of Finchmaster's calculus when discarding that gateway, being like, if he plays Sanctum, I've got a standardized testing. I know I can take out his whole board.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be his whole board, right? Because at this point he's got the 3 Fangtooths. All he needs is it to kill enough creatures that the Fangtooths can do the rest.
Yeah, the only problem would have been if he'd played a Scrivener Fabian. That wouldn't have worked. So maybe he didn't think that, and he just kind of got a little bit fortunate. But
I mean, yeah, but I think there's definitely some thinking that, like,
there's a managed risk there. That
there are ways to clear a board that aren't. Kronos being used to archive some Logos cards there. Maybe not ideal. Might have liked to play those. Someone will have to remind me on the rules whether Kronos is you must or you may archive.
I think it's no. You may. You don't have to. You may. So I think it would have been intentional archiving there.
No, fair enough. Well,
I
he's
don't know
put a
what
lot of cards
he.
in his archive.
I don't know what he archived. If hopefully I past me will scroll over the archive at some point, but we shall see. Yeah, you can see that you may archive a card. I am mousing over Cronus.
It's very clear that past you had similar thoughts to present me on Kronos.
Past me was very much also curious about this.
Untamed, yep, got to expect that. Gonna maybe play the flip, play Earthbind, always nice. Rapid Evolution of Kronos.
No, I think just discard the Flume, forget the archive.
Yeah, discard the Flume, and then kill them both with
poor innocent Flume.
Oh, those Fangtooth Caverns. I mean, you've got to talk about big artifacts. Obviously, the things people think about are Heart of the Forest, Ethan's Jar, but Fangtooth Cavern, if you've got multiples of them in a deck, can be absolutely controlling.
It can, and I think that's the thing. Like 2 is hard to deal with. 3 is crushing, especially when you've got to play like Finchmaster, who has who's the deck to take advantage of this fully. Like Finchmaster's deck doesn't need the board to operate. In fact, it's if anything happier without a board to operate, and he's using it to full effect here. And yeah, we are seeing the archive. Quite a few Logos cards in the archive there actually.
Loop, Skippy, Bob Buckton. I mean, Skippy very useful normally, less useful when you're looking at Finchmaster's deck, and it just doesn't really care, as you say, about that board.
No, I mean it's the only thing it could be useful is if we see this essence scale come down, it turns that off. But we obviously the archive picked up.
And nothing.
Yeah, and that's the 3rd mark of displayed now that has hit nothing of Finchmaster's board. It's brutal.
And then using the Essence Steel to steal 1 and get an extra reaping.
Yep, and putting himself to 8. Will we see a key forge from Finchmaster here? It looks like we will. From Finchmaster, from Lorenzo there. Apologies.
Yes, Finchmaster not looking like he's got much that can really stop Lorenzo forging, but on the flip side of that, he's got a Lithogica, a Mutagenic Serum, and a Daughter, which he considered discarding, or particularly maybe in the case of the Daughter, playing them for that extra bit of size.
Yeah, I can't quite recall what he's got as an archive, but I think, yeah, the Lithogica, the Serum, and the Daughter to draw a card, it's going to be a very good play here for Finchmaster. I think that's what we will see. You know, it allows you still kill both the disc creatures that Lorenzo has out to get your armor back.
Just thinking about that though, we saw in his archive that he had, I think, another Inspector. Maybe he might choose to do this, pull that, and
Essence Scale, hit that. Yeah, that's a possibility too, definitely. And let's just have a look. Yeah, we do see the archive picked up here.
Yep, and as I said, double Inspector, which you can play and then have your own Fangtooth Caverns destroy to purge 2 cards from Lorenzo's hand.
Yep, and we do see the Relentless Creeper with a Amber hip on it, which you're going to be very happy with.
Yeah, Relentless Creeper with an Amber, very nice. Get rid of this, not waiting on the Fangtooths.
Oh, and that's interesting here, not playing the Relentless Creeper. But correct me if I'm... Yes, so the Relentless Creeper is going to die after the deck's been reshuffled.
Yeah.
That's very clever play from Finchmaster there, making sure that he can pull that out of the discard at his leisure and it doesn't get flipped with the deck.
Some clever timing he considered right there.
Yeah, and I think like some people will look at this Fangtooth deck and say, oh, it's a simple deck. You just put down the Fangtooths and just play pips. But we're seeing real skill here from Finchmaster. You know, things like that with Relentless Creeper. You know, little things like that show he really knows how to play this deck and is really getting the most out of it.
I mean, if you're looking at what Lorenzo is doing in response, what he's doing is playing out some Logos creatures that he knows are going to die. And that's just a fact of where you are with this deck and this game state.
Yeah, and
although he has drawn into some Sanctum, plus Sanctum is an archive, that means maybe they won't all die next time.
No, and you've got to think that Lorenzo's like, right, this is the time. If we're going to try and get these out, we've just seen him flip his deck. We know he's used all of his board clear. He might not have drawn into any more yet. This next turn, we might be able to get some Sanctum out and do something with it.
I mean, Finchmaster thinking about his house choice here, my instinct is that it's probably Logos, given he's got 4 Logos cards and 1 Untamed in hand.
I would think so, yeah. I mean, that Lithogica, as I've said many a times, I'm not a big Lethalogica guy, but it could definitely be one to play. And I think you probably don't play the Munchling just because it will die and it will leave either Adaptoid or Book-Bukton alive. So you just play the Daughter for that card draw.
For the autoencoder.
Yeah, and then you probably leave the Adaptoid alive because if it's not got anything to fight, it's not actually that useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an extra amber from Reaping, right?
Exactly.
A lot of Adaptoids. Really interesting plays come from decks where you've got lots of pips, like Lorenzo has, but then also a way to make that Adaptoid fight quite a lot, which he doesn't have because there's no board to fight.
He does not, no.
Yep, Lethalogica getting both daughters now. Ooh, that's an interesting complication for him right there.
I think we will see both daughters come down. He does discard the Munchling for the autoencoder, probably seeing what's going into his archive before he makes the decision with the daughters. I mean, I don't... It's a difficult one, because leave the Bob-Bukton alive. It's a good one to have alive. It's got an Ember on it. You'd be like, I'm quite like to have that gone, but drawing an extra card's pretty nice too.
Drawing an extra 2, right, if he plays both.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to play 1, because I think he'll definitely want to get rid of the Bob-Bukton and not be fussed about the Adaptoid. It's whether or not he plays the second, I think, would be my thought here. I guess if you discard it, though, you archive a card. So you're getting a card either way.
Just a question of whether you would rather a card in your hand.
And we see the concession from Lorenzo, I guess, just sees the writing on the wall, thinks, I can't get back into this with the Fangtooths, the Essence Scale, the autoencoder, all of Finchmaster's tricks down, and just goes, you know what, GG, well played.
I mean, I think just as a thought on this, that like a lot of people say when you look at Keyforge that it doesn't have states where you're going to concede or draw very often. But what you can see is that there are some matchups like this one when you're in a state like this where, I mean, maybe you should think about conceding because you probably don't have a way out and it's going to be a bit of a miserable experience, you grinding your way through just to have all of your creatures destroyed every turn.
Yeah, I think especially in like a longer tournament as well, there's definitely some credence to this where that it's going to be mentally very taxing to kind of play out this game, and that you're probably going to lose eventually, and that you're going to be then like a lot more tired for the rest of the games, and you just think, you know what, I'm done here. I'm not getting back into this game. I'd rather save my mental reserves for a game that actually they'll make a difference to.
And of course, there's the additional factor that's specific to this matchup, which is that these are both players from the Hamburg Atlanteans. They both know each other. There's reasonable odds that they might be friends. Mm-hmm. And if you're playing a game with a friend, as you and I have in the past, when you're in a situation where you can't win, you do often go, you know what, I'll concede. It's not fun for either of us at this point.
And also, further credence that, if they played this matchup quite a few times, I imagine these are two probably of their best decks. If they're bringing them to Kote, you've got to imagine that they've played against each other before and have like ended up in this situation and been like, this only ever goes one way. And
oh yeah, absolutely. I think if I were Lorenzo, I probably would have conceded in his position as well.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. But yeah, a really great game, a really interesting game to see, and I think seeing really what Prodigy used to can do and the kind of situation it can get its opponent in if allowed to, really excellent to both players, and yeah, happy with that game. I have been David Baron von Fabulous Lark.
I've been Matt, Technical Support Tuck.
We've been Screech Bomb Commentaries. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.